Okay, Connor, tell us a little bit about how Chris Chibnal has redeemed himself.
Okay, so he went on a podcast. What's it called?
No, Radio Free Skaro.
Radio Free Skaro, which was so interesting. I love stuff like this. We were talking previously on the show about how we just love to hear creators talk about creativity.
Definitely.
And this was such an interesting interview where basically he was at Gallifrey 1. These guys came up to him and said, hey, can we borrow you for like an hour? And they went and sat in a room and just spoke about Doctor Who and a little bit about Broadchurch as well, which was nice to hear. Before I went into it, I was like, I hope they talk a little bit about Broadchurch, because I find that I just previously rewatched it, actually, all 3 seasons, and I found it very interesting. A lot of good little tidbits.
Yeah,
he dropped.
We're going to talk about a few things from it, but we're not going to go in detail because we want you to go check out this podcast because it's such a good podcast. Minor takeaway: Chris Chibnall, sexy voice on the pod. He sounded very good. Husky, like mid-40s.
It's kind of sad, man. I feel like we never really got to hear from him when the show was coming out. He did the tiniest little bits of like behind the scenes stuff, which is fair enough. Maybe he just wanted to be more in the background. I don't know, I just wish we would have gone to see more of him. I guess we got so used to seeing Russell and Steven so much that when he didn't really want to be in the limelight as much, he just decided not to. I don't know. Well,
he debunked a lot of the things that people have been sort of saying and blaming him a bit for in the past, like the Christmas specials being moved to New Year's Day wasn't necessarily didn't stem from him and his hatred for Doctor Who on Christmas Day. And he said there that for a while Spyfall was scheduled to be released part 1 on Christmas Day, part 2 on Boxing Day. How cool would that have been?
I loved that idea. And if you're wondering why, the BBC said it was too dark.
Which is Spyfall too dark?
Looking forward to the Damned.
I know,
man.
that's what I was going to say.
I think that's actually kind of why, though, because I think they got a lot of complaints of Voyage of the Damned. But yeah, I know what you mean.
But even since then, episodes like Last Christmas are significantly darker than Spyfall.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that would have been sick, and that was his original plan, and I think that would have been great. So yeah, that's just, you know, again, people just assume it's all his fault, and it's not. You know, all the time it is the BBC in the background going, "This is what we want. Yeah, we want this.
Do it for me."
You know, you'll take the blame, and it's. He wanted spin-offs as well.
He did,
which is another thing. People were like, why don't you just give it to us? I'm like, yeah, why don't you give it to us? And I guess the BBC again were like, we want to do it, but we don't really want to put the money in it.
Yeah, we don't want to pay for it.
Yeah, we don't want to.
Yeah, it's a one where I think people don't understand sometimes that it's not Chris Chibnall's decision whether or not another show gets made. You know, he's captaining one ship and he's got to take care of the financing and stuff for that ship, and he can't just go, right, now let's make this one. There is so many other people involved in that decision-making process. And yeah, it never happened, and I'm sure maybe COVID was definitely like a big thing that could have prevented it from happening.
Well, plus the last one didn't go down well.
Yes, exactly.
And I think they were probably cautious about that. And it's like, yeah, you know, Chibnall primarily worked on spin-offs, so why would he be against doing them? He clearly knew what it was like to work on them and knew they worked and people loved them. Yeah. So, yeah, again, another thing he kind of got blamed for, which wasn't necessarily his fault.
Yeah, I feel like, you know, he kind of got a bit shafted at his time there. And I'll say this, I don't think that in this interview, he never blames the BBC for any of this kind of thing. But
just speaks the facts, you know?
I think, like, his situation, they sort of said over the 5 years of his tenure how much the TV landscape changed, right? And I think that he copped the worst of that, trying to make a big sci-fi show that's kind of out of place where it's at the moment. And he said, you know, we got to use foresight, and so they shortened the series down to 10 episodes, which by the time those episodes came out automatically felt a little bit outdated because all of a sudden everyone was wanting like 8 episode seasons. And so it's really interesting to see that. And I also think that the BBC, when making Chib's era, I just get a vibe that they didn't know what to do with Who, and that's why. And now with them jumping to Disney Plus, was sort of them figuring out what to do with it. And so I think it's going to be easy for us to see a lot of the problems in Chibnall's era be fixed in the RTD era, but I don't necessarily think that comes back down to Chibnall. I think he copped a bit of a bad hand in a way. Like Doctor Who was sort of teetering off at the end of the Moffat era, and Chibnall had to kind of try and make it work. Plus he got COVID halfway through. I think he got dealt a pretty bad and rough hand.
It's like if I can kind of compare it to my job for a second, like, because we're like the builders, we're like the main people on the site. People come in like plasterers and like brickies and like electricians and painters and stuff. When something goes wrong with them, they always come to us, even though it has nothing to do with us. It's kind of similar to that. It's like, well, that didn't really have anything to do with me. Just because like I'm the main person here, doesn't mean that every little thing that happens under this operation is my fault.
Yeah,
it's like, this is the job I'm working on, but that's a completely different, like, fucking ballpark.
That's a good analogy.
He also said that the changes in the Sunday as well. They spoke about that, and it was the same kind of thing with the New Year's special. They were trying to
the changing of the time slot and the day that it came out.
It's funny, he mentioned two of Stephen's shows, which was Sherlock and he mentioned Happy Valley as well, if you noticed.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
Happy Valley, Sherlock, and Dracula, which were all New Year's releases, and they had done well, and that's two of Stephen's shows, and that was their justification as well for maybe doing the New Year specials. And with the Sunday slot, I think they were just trying something out as well. And
you don't know till you try. No,
you don't, and you can't really blame for trying. I don't think the Christmas specials are coming back, like most presumably. I don't think we're all terribly mad that we had 5 years of.
I think it makes it feel so much better that we're having Christmas specials back. We've had a bit of a break. 5 years of no Christmas specials. It's so refreshing to then go back and get a Christmas special.
Do you know what's so funny? It's like Earth gets fucked over every year at Christmas. Did it just not get fucked over for 5 years?
I know.
Now it's going to go back to every Christmas getting completely fucked over.
Not again.
It's like, it's back. The cycle's back.
Yeah, they should.
The doomsday clock is getting worse.
They should end this Christmas special coming up with like, let's hope that doesn't become a regular thing.
Again.
For a little while there, Doctor Who was a little bit cancelled during COVID, but and Chib said that he had to do things to get it back on air that he wasn't going to go into on that podcast.
For 2 weeks, it was really up in the air, and he said for an hour it was cancelled.
Yeah, he said that was like
for an hour it was cancelled.
He just imagined like being in an interview and it's like, all right, we're not doing Doctor Who, and it must be one of those things where like he just like walked out and was probably fuming and was like, we can't do this, and then like the moment he like calmed down was like, now we've got to fucking do this. Let's go get them, boys.
It's so interesting to hear.
Let's go.
Like there was he said, I heard from the people on an EastEnders set that it took 3 hours. It would normally take an hour to move a stage. That's just like some really low budget soap. And then you're going to do a show like Doctor Who, where there's so many sets and
it is unbelievable what they did in that time
and all that. Like it actually is. It took them a year to film 6 episodes,
which they said was the longest Doctor Who's ever shot for.
Is insane when you think about it.
Yeah,
a lot of respect to Jodie Mandip and John Bishop, who were away from their families for a solid year, and the crew.
Yeah,
like I think this gives you a huge amount of respect for Chris and the team.
Yeah,
because even if you didn't like it, I think you kind of gotta give them a bit of a standing ovation because it sounded like a complete fucking nightmare. Yeah, do you want to stand up?
There we go.
What are we at Cannes Film Festival? We're going to stand up for 8 minutes.
Yeah, do an 8 minute
sit down.
Ovation. Hey!
Yeah, no, I got a lot of respect for the guy now, and I want to hear more from him.
Yeah, hopefully we do. Hopefully, he sounds like he loved being at Gallifrey Once, so that's fantastic. There are all sorts of other lovely things in that interview, so go check that out.
You should watch the show. Yeah, definitely 100% check it out. It's such an interesting listen.
Yeah, they talk about all sorts of other like kind of inner working things at the BBC of how Doctor Who's made.
A bit of Broadchurch.
A bit more about COVID, Doctor Who COVID stuff, and how certain other elements of Doctor Who at COVID came about. So make sure you go check it out for that kind of stuff.